happy Thursday. It is time to talk again and have our little live and kind of let you know what's going on this week. And a bit like last week, I was talking a small bit about the bubble dash shawl and all of that. This time we're actually moving on to shawls more in general, and I want to share with you a new kit that I've got as well. So I think what kind of pushed me on from this is kind of tied in with looking at color work. A lot of times when I play with color work, particularly mosaic style color work, it tends to be in shawls, because shawls are just a fantastic canvas for playing with color and playing with shapes and kind of playing with knitting in general, because the gauge is a little less critical. You can usually go a lot brighter with a shawl or kind of really big contrasts, as opposed to when you're knitting something that you're going to be wearing on your, more directly up against you and trying to match outfits. You tend to need to be a little bit more careful, or you're probably more conservative with your choices. But with the shawl, it's like, particularly if it's going to be used as a glorified scarf, because let's be honest, that's the way a lot of shawls ends up being worn. With that, you usually have a coat, which more often than not is neutral, like greys and blacks and browns. And so you can have a really bright shawl and it'll be totally fitting. It's not going to clash with anything, and it'll add a lovely color pop to your winter outfit or to just a colder weather in general, Sometimes shawls aren't just for cold weather though. I know that like the times that I've gotten the most use out of shawls tend to be in warm climates, or if I'm traveling and things like that, where I can end up leaving something that can be stuffed into a bag when I'm traveling and you're on a plane. If ever get on a plane again, I'm sure it'll happen at some point, but you can just pull it out and it's like a glorified lightweight blanket then at that point, which is perfect. So shawls are actually a lot of fun to knit and very useful to have around. And a lot of people kind of go by the policy of you can never have too many shawls. Plus, added bonus, shawls can be given to pretty much anyone because you don't have to worry about fit. So a bit like with newborn, I know people who will use small baby garments as practice, and then they'll just store them, and then the next time they have a friend that has baby, they have a couple ready to go because they're always going to be in pretty much the same size. Shawls can fall into the same category. They make really, really nice gifts, particularly if you've knit something that you wanted to knit it because it was fun. It was like you were curious about the construction, but it's not necessarily something that you're going to wear. Fantastic gift, and you don't have to worry about it fitting somebody because it's one size fits all really for the most part. So I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about shapes now, because the wearability of shawls has got a certain amount to do with the shapes. I was talking, some of the discussion at the start of this week was asking people's favorite shawl shapes, and wearability and whether they stay on you have a huge, huge impact on that. On a personal basis, I tend to like kind of asymmetrical or more shallow shawls, and that's because I mainly wear them as a scarf that can be opened out for more warmth. So let me pull one over here. I've got stuff attached here. Like an example of that is going to be your neon skyline here. It's very, very wide, but while it's deep, it's not crazy deep. So what you can actually do with that then is just squish it up and wear it like a scarf. But if you need more warmth, I'm aware I'm kind of knocking over the microphone here, but you could also open it up and kind of put it across your shoulders if you need something. If you're sitting down and your shoulders are cold, it's got the ability to open up. So they're one of my favorites because I wear them when I'm most likely to need them, which is in a scarf format, but it does double duty as a mini blanket for colder situations. So that's the kind that I love to wear, and it's what I get the most use out of. And similar to that would be rectangular shawls, like they'd be maybe this deep, but if it's in the finer fabric, so when you squish it down, it's still not going to be too thick, so you can wear it the same way. So that one, with this one, the way this is not so much asymmetrical as it's knit sideways and it's got a bit of biasing going on. because you start at the tip here and you're both increasing and decreasing, and you're working through stripes and mosaic stitch patterns all the way up to this point here, but you've got the middle part is dipped out. And so what you do at the end then is you're decreasing at the sides and decreasing at the middle till the whole thing closes off. So that's a really fun type of construction. The two I've got, I don't have quite a full triangular shawl. What I do have here is, let me remind myself, Anglesey, I think, yeah, Anglesey is this one here, which is from Knitting with Rainbows. And this is a shallow, wide shawl. I'll go back here, shallow and wide. And the way this starts is it begins in the center here, and all of the increases on the right side and the wrong side are out along the edges, and they're happening quite quickly. If I remember correctly, I think there might be 2 increases each side on the right side and 1 on the wrong side, so it comes out very, very fast from that central little nub. Where's the middle of it here? There's a central nub up here, and then it grows very, very quickly, but it doesn't get too deep. And so this is, it's a little bit like a scarf really, that has narrower tips at the edge, but a little bit deeper in the middle. So you can make it a bit of a shawl, but it doesn't, you know, it's like it's a scarf plus, I suppose. Now, where you put your increases will kind of have will change the way a shawl shapes. With this one, because of the stitch pattern, to keep it continuous, all of the increases are at the side. And so what that means is you have this nice open middle section, but the edges are going to curl up a lot more. And in fact, you can sometimes get like a kind of angel wing effect if you keep going where it curls up a little bit further. If you're doing what's called a triangular shawl, you start at the beginning and the very middle here, but you've got 2 increases every right side row here, and an increase here and an increase here. So it keeps growing out till you've got a very big triangle. Interestingly, until I had figured out shawl construction and just general geometry in knitting, I found triangular shawls fascinating. The fact that you can start with a few stitches and end up with a giant triangle. And a lot of people really like what's a very traditional shape, the triangular shawl, because of the fact that it's nice and deep in the back. So if you want to keep your back warm, a triangular shawl is excellent. And because it's very regular, you can also easily fit stitch patterns in along each side. And you've got a triangle here, and you can increase the, you know, if there's all over stitch pattern, you can add more stitches to it on each side as it grows down. So that would be the, I suppose, the traditional triangular one. I have a tendency towards slightly untraditional ones, as anyone who knows my knitting will know. And this one here, She Oak Stripes, here we go, let me open this up. It ends up being a similar shape to a triangular shawl, but the construction is different because it starts with the full depth with this panel here, but then the stitches are picked up along the side of that for each side, and you decrease to create one side, one wing, and you do the same on the other side. And the reason I was kind of doing that is it gives you a little bit more interplay of the stripes and the stitch patterns because you've got it going in a couple of different directions. This has got an even decrease all the way along, but that also gives you the option of creating more of a wave at the edge, that you might start off with it decreasing more slowly and then increasing more rapidly, so it will kind of create a slight slope and then a much more of a kind of a wave coming towards the end. So you've got the ability to do that. This also has the ability to be the same kind of shape as the side-to-side shawl, where you could start with just a couple of stitches here and you can increase, usually just down at the bottom, all the way to the full width. Then you work straight across for a while and then you start decreasing on the other side. So again, it's kind of another interesting way of creating shawls, and it's a good way of actually using a very exact amount of yarn because you know where your midpoint is, so you can keep knitting until you've reached half of your yarn, and then you can start decreasing. It's going to be kind of fun as well if for instance you've got a gradient or a couple of different color interplays going across the side is really, really interesting looking. So that's kind of which is the easiest shawl of mine for a beginning. Probably if you're interested in kind of trying to learn the very basics of increasing in lace, centrique, CENTRIQUE is probably a really good one, because it's got a very basic, large scale, repeatable motif, and it's done in a sports weight yarn, so it's not too thin. So it's a really interesting one to learn a triangular shawl construction. It was the first shawl I designed, and I like the way it looks, and I think it's a good one for learning basic triangular shawl construction. So centrique is worth a look. If a circular shawl or a semicircular shawl is your jam, then trousseau is probably what you're going to want to look for. This is, you can see, I'll move back. This is half a circle. If you were doing a full circle, you would be starting in the middle here, but instead of just do a couple of stitches on one side, you would double up and it would go on both sides, and you're going to keep increasing as you come out. With this one, you can see here, you've got increased round of circle of yarn overs, the next one and the next one. And what you're actually doing is, on those increased rounds, you've got every second, you're increasing all the way around. So it's knit one yarn over, a huge amount of increases. Then there's only a couple of rows and there's the next one. But each time you knit the next increase round, you're doubling the distance between them. So this one, say you started with 4 rows, this one will be 8 rows. Then this is going to be 16 rows. And you can see on the 16 row one, for instance, we're now introducing a stitch pattern, because there's going to be a bit like a circular yoke, where one of the benefits of having all those rounds of increases or decreases happening in one round, you've got all the way around the yoke, or in this case around the circles of the shawl, you've got all of these stitches that don't increase. So it's very easy to use to put stitch patterns in, because there's no increases or decreases. Can I put the shawl on so you can see what it looks like? Absolutely. I will. Just give me a sec. I'll just kind of finish talking about it first of all, and then I will show you it being worn. So that is the first section here. I got it the wrong way around. Where there's there'd be 16, and then it's going to increase to 24, and then 48, and then the final one. So you can see how there's more and more rows available for those stitch patterns. And actually the semicircular shawl, I think, is very wearable. It's like, you can see it lies very nicely across the body here. Like, I'll open it out and I'll turn to the back, and it comes fairly far down the back. But if you, like, my 2 ways of wearing shawls, like when I wear a shawl, it tends to be, I'll often wear it kind of backwards like this, and then just wrap it around with one end here. And then it's hard to do this on camera, but you kind of get the message. If I can find the other end, and the other end around here is probably, that's the most wearable way of wearing it. I'm aware of not hitting the microphone, because you won't be able to hear a word I'm saying then. But often the biggest part in the front, then wrap the other 2 ones around, particularly if you're wearing it with a coat. Shawl pins are fantastic if you want it over a dress, or if you want it somewhere that you're going to be cold. Then just having it where you've got slightly longer on one side, pull it across and put your shawl pin up here. It's absolutely perfect. But that's only going to work if you don't have something else over it. I find that having the middle of it in front and then wrapping the other 2 around works best if what you're doing is, if you're going to have it under a coat and you've just got the front part that is, you want to keep warm there. I'll be honest, those are the 2 primary ways that I end up wearing shawls, is depending on whether I have got a shawl pin with me or whether I'm wearing over a coat or by itself. Now, let me pull this one up here. This is Ice Cloud here. I'm going to pull this back again. And this one is kind of taking biasing to the extreme, and it creates kind of an unusual shape. But again, because it's very long and doesn't get terribly wide, like the widest point is down here, but it's actually on the angle. And that means that it's a particularly good one again for using as a scarf. or opening up as you need it. So the way these ones work is, this is a kind of a biased or on the diagonal is what these are. So you start with a tiny amount of stitches down here, and every single row you have, got to turn backwards here, every single row you have an increase, like right side and wrong side row all the way along here, but every right side row you have a decrease. And so it means it's growing out this way, but it's decreasing down this way, and it creates everything on a bias. It slants all of them away across. So very easy to do. It does mean you have to pay a little bit more attention if there's going to be a stitch pattern, because you're adding one stitch and you're decreasing another stitch as you're going across. So it's going to be moving on you. So you need to take care of that. But it means that as you're going along, you're creating this really, really cool diagonal fabric as you go along. And at the end here, this one goes, this is cumulus, which is why it's called ice cloud. So it's got Nua and cumulus, then it's got some cumulus by itself, and then it's Nua and cumulus here, and it ends up with Nua. So it's kind of got a combination of the two, and this is brushed alpaca and silk, so super, super soft, definitely a next to skin kind of comfort on it, I think. But yeah, ice cloud, I just love the feel of that, mainly because the cumulus is so soft. Now, I wanted to tell you as well about some new yarns I've got in stock. So it's for, I'll put this up here, the neon skylines that I showed you. This is a combination of Nua and Townhouse Yarns Fade Street 4-ply. So this was the original, had a really bright kind of highlighter yellow, and it went with the Nua and a dark navy late night blues. Drag the names up out of my head. I've got a couple of new kits in the shop that just went up yesterday, and I'm particularly fond of this one. This is the Fade Street is Cupcake, and if you pair it with Cafe Flamingo, it really, really makes a nice combination, because if you can kind of, I might turn it this way, you can see this is this kind of a speckledy yarn, and you've got like the little pinks running through, but most of it is kind of a much lighter color. There's just be these little dots of light color, and then you can take the Cafe Flamingo and it's going to pick up those lighter specks, so the two really play nicely together is the way I think of it. So I think that's just a really, really bright, sunny, light feel of the combination. And I'm also extremely fond of this combination. This one, look at the lovely colors in this. This is Burn. And I, again, was picking up different colors. Like you could go with other ones. You could probably also do, like what's that similar to? Rolling Bales could work. But I think I just kind of felt, when I put the two together, that combination here, this is Hatter's Teal Party, and just the little bits of blue running through there, I loved the way those two popped out. So they're up in the shop now if you want to find them under Neon Skyline shawl kits. So I've only got a couple of each. It's Jenny from Townhouse Yarns up in Dublin. She sent those down to me earlier this week, so I'm kind of excited to get those back in the shop again. And so it feels like a good way of showing off Shawl Week is the fact that you can kind of pull together different weights yarns and different colors, and I do think it is a good way of playing with colors. And even if you're unsure yourself as to what will go together, if you've got small little bits of leftover colors in your stash at home, just do a little swatch, test out the stitch patterns and see how those different colors look together, because often you can think you know what it's going to look like, but until you have the stitch pattern knit up, you don't really know for sure. So do keep an eye out as well up on the YouTube channel. I've got, I did a little video looking at Neon Skyline and kind of talking a bit more detail about stitch pattern and the construction and things like that. So that will go up later this afternoon on YouTube if you want to go take a look. Does anyone have any other questions on shawls for me? I might next week might leave off the microphone and go into a little bit more depth and talking about how to wear shawls. If you would like any type of shawl construction demonstrated on how to wear it, or if you've got ideas for me on how you wear it, because I'm always amazed at some of the really, really good ideas that people can kind of jump in with for different ways of wearing. So thank you for joining me. Have a good Thursday. Bye, everyone.